Hello and welcome to the video. Radiomaster have just released this new radio. This is the GX12, the latest in their lineup. And if I pick it up, you'll realize that actually it's not as big as you think it is. If I put it alongside something like one of their more recent radios, the Boxer, you can see that it's actually quite a compact radio. But despite being compact, it's actually bristling with controls, which makes me very, very happy. Every time I've had in a Radiomaster radio to review, I fed back to them that I personally wanted more switches, because the more switches you have and more controls means the more universal it can be. A lot of the radios they've released recently, things like the Boxer, things like the Zorro, have more been aimed at the Betaflight quadcopter crowd, which is fine, but it does mean that unfortunately those of us who also fly things like iNav and ArduPilot are missing enough switches to do all the additional things that you would do with things like fixed wing or VTOL aircraft. And I was very pleased when this arrived, because it looks like Radiomaster have finally delivered what I've been asking for. This is a compact, handy remote that's covered in switches and controls, and even more excitingly, has the option to swap the switches about without needing a degree in electronics too. These two pieces at the shoulders are actually designed to come out with a couple of screws, and you can change how they're laid out. In fact, in the box, I'll show you in a minute, there are some additional panels as well as spare switches. So if you want to change the layout, you can customize it to how you want the radio to be. That is fantastic. Isn't the first time I've seen this. Jumper actually did it on their last radio, but this is a far more sophisticated, smart way of doing it, where the entire panel can be replaced and you can just design what you want. That also potentially means those of us that like to do 3D design, and no doubt there'll be lots of additional custom setups for these things that you can go and 3D print. Plus, this radio supports both 2.4 and 900 MHz Express LRS, as well as the latest range of Express LRS Gemini, or Gem-X as it's been commonly referred to from what I've seen. And that allows you to have both a 2.4 and a 900 MHz connection to your model at the same time. It's kind of the open source equivalent to the FreeSky tandem system. But because you have both antennas, this means that this can talk to traditional 2.4 GHz Express LRS, 900 MHz Express LRS receivers, and also the Gemini X stuff too. So while I unbox it, let's go through some of the highlights. This is designed to fold down into a very small package so that it's easy to transport. As you've already seen, the antennas fold out of the top, but also the sticks themselves also fold down too. If you lift them up slightly, they're on spring-loaded guides, you lift them up, you can fold them across, and that means that you don't have to worry about gimbal protectors. It's the kind of radio that would fit neatly into a backpack without you having to use the supplied case. The gimbals are CNC'd aluminium, and they are Hall effect, and they're 1000 Hz digital gimbals with EdgeTX sync. That should give you really good precision and responsiveness with a high degree of accuracy. Again, we have the folding gimbal sticks, we have the removable switch panels. There is the option for DIY SMA ports if you want to have SMA style antennas. There's an OLED display at the top. This OLED display is probably one of the easiest to read that I've ever had on any radio that I've had in here, and I'll show you what that looks like in a little bit more detail in a minute. Internal storage is 512 megabytes rather than using SD or TF cards. That's what EdgeTX is kind of recommending these days. More radios will be moving towards it. I personally quite like the SD card. It's easy to pop it out and stick it into your computer. Does mean that you need to plug this in if you're going to access the storage or do your upgrades. Speaking of plugging things in, single USB-C port at the top, and that is for balance charging the batteries, SIM connectivity, firmware updates, and direct access to the integrated flash memory too. 6 position switches and SA to SD switches as well, and the 6 position switches are individually programmable as well, and you can also decide on the colors that they light up, which provides nice visual feedback on which switch is pressed. Both of the transmitters in here for the 2.4 and the 900 megahertz are going to be running at 1 watt. So when you have both of those turned on, things are going to get a little bit warm. However, there is quite a decent cooling system in here, and there's an exhaust here at the back, which is designed to get the hot air out of the radio and keep things cool even on hot days. And they're also talking about the fact that they've done a number of things to the radio to make it a little bit more resilient for extreme conditions. So they have a PCB nano coating, they've used thicker plastics with that hydrophobic PCB coating on top, and they've designed it so it can withstand hot, cold, dry and humid conditions. So that should mean this is a reasonably rugged radio as well, for those situations where you're not just flying on dry, calm, warm, sunny days. Size of this is 183 by 148 by 78 millimeters. Weight is about 573 grams. It doesn't feel super heavy, but it actually feels heavy enough for its size to feel like it's a quality piece of kit. Frequency supported 2.4 gig and sub-G 900 megahertz. The supported protocols, this is all Express ELRS. Powered from a 2S battery, so 6.6 to 8.4 volts DC. This one has been supplied with a couple of 18650 lithium ion cells. The retail units won't come with that. This is just for this review unit. And the display is 128 by 64 pixels monochrome OLED display. So let's have a look at the default button configuration as it's supplied. And I'll take this protective film off. I know that always upsets everybody that I leave that on. So in the box, one of the things I didn't show in the unboxing was some additional pieces, specifically these plates. So these are the plates that can be used to go over the top. So as I'll show you in a minute, but these sections here with these kind of two screws lift out and can be replaced with other setups. So if you have a particular setup, let's get the right side for this side, you can see here that you can kind of blank stuff off, you can take things out. Not only that, but in the box we also have some additional switches too, so we can change the layout. But let me go through the default layout as it's supplied so you can see how many switches and other bits and pieces we have on here. So in terms of the main stuff, we have the main gimbals. These don't feel like they're completely full size to my fingertips, and I don't know whether that is just because there is a little bit more room from the edge of the gimbal to the edge of the radio. Now for a thumber like me, it feels absolutely fantastic. This feels like a game controller, and I can easily get into the corners with my thumbs without any problems at all. If you are a pincher, you're going to have to bring your hand quite a way around in order to get into a comfortable pinching position. It's possible, but with the back, this isn't a deeply contoured grip. So that kind of normal grip that you need to get with kind of your bottom two fingers and stabilize here at the top with your kind of middle finger isn't there if you want to do the pinching. However, for thumbing, it feels absolutely fantastic. In terms of the shaft that the adjustable foldable sticks are, I know I'll get asked about this, that looks like an M3 screw, so that's a standard one. They are obviously height adjustable. I've got them on their lowest setting and they actually feel pretty good, but it does mean that you can tweak those around. Just 4 trims in reasonably sensible positions for all the controls. No additional trims here, that's not necessarily a bad thing. System and model buttons, as well as the 4 navigations for both the return, page forward and back, and the telemetry. The 6 position switch that all radios seem to have these days, that is down here, so it's something that you have to take your fingers off to get to. Handier for things like Ardu Pilot, in my humble opinion, or when you're flying non-FPV and you can actually look at your radio to find them. However, I do like the fact that what they've done is they've separated them into 2 banks of 3. Why do I like that? Well, when your thumb comes down, you can easily sense that you're over the 3, and you can kind of get the outside ones really, really easy rather than not being sure where you are. 2 rotary controls here at the bottom with a nice chunky detent, so it's easy to find the middle of those, P1 and P2. We have a speaker grill which is actually pointing up towards your face, which actually makes a lot of sense. We have two buttons here at the top that feel momentary, and then we're into all the goodies in the top of the radio itself. Let's start here on the right hand side. We have a momentary push switch by default, and then two 3-position switches. We have another rotary control with a nice firm central detent, which is great. On the other side, we have a mirror of that. Again, two 3-position switches, a momentary switch, and another rotary control, again with a nice firm detent. These again are swappable, so by undoing these two screws you can take this out, and then the replacement pieces actually have little connectors on, so you can plug things into place, and if you want to swap these things around you can. Personally, I'm going to be tweaking this one to give myself as many switches as I can possibly get, because for an aircraft flyer like me that flies other stuff apart from drones and beta flight, these are incredibly handy because I have one for my modes, I have one for my auto trim, one for auto tune, one for arming and return to home, I have one for my beeper, and then I have another one for something like flaps. So I can easily use 6 switches up without breaking a sweat. Other things on the top here, if I turn it around because that's the way they printed it, we have the USB connector, we have the headphone jack here at the top, and we have the DSC port. That is for going to be the trainer, and then we have the kind of exhaust here for the heat. There is a little fan inside for those 1-watt ELRS goodies. Then to extend the antennas, you just lift them up, bend them forward, and away you go. Can't see any notation on here which is which for 2.4 or the 900 megahertz stuff, but I really like the fact that it just folds down into such a neat little package, and it just fits inside your hand. Obviously the screen is not a full color screen. Again, I'm not particularly bothered about that. Flying FPV, the only thing you're going to use the screen for is to make sure that you have the right model memory selected, and you might have it displaying something like the iNav or Betaflight Lua script, because I use it to just check things like, have I got enough satellites so that iNav is going to arm? But the actual radio itself just feels nice and solid. On the back, there isn't really anything to write home about. We have the battery compartment. It actually comes with an adapter for two 18650s, or it's going to take a 2S LiPo in this particular bay. Again, the batteries in this review unit have been supplied. Please be aware that the batteries do not come with the retail unit. We have a bit of foam to stop everything rattling around. Then the only other thing really on the back here is the bay, so that you can plug in an adapter up for anything else that you want. Although, to be honest, with the Gemini X stuff having all the Express LRS options on here, if you're investing in Express LRS, it's only going to be for your legacy stuff maybe. And then we have another little cover in here, not exactly sure what that's for, but that's it. In terms of all the switches, there's more than most. There's definitely more than things like the Boxer and the Zorro. And I think that makes it far more useful for pilots who don't just want to fly quads on things like Betaflight. So as you've probably guessed from the video already, I am a fan of this new GX12 radio. This is the kind of radio that I could use for all of my flying requirements, whether it is a quad, a plane, a wing, a VTOL, whether it's Betaflight, iNav or ArduPilot. There's enough controls on here to run pretty much everything that I have, including both cars and boats too. And there's a number of things I like. The first is the screen. The screen is super easy to see and to read. This is going to be my radio when I do setup demos in HTX from now on. It looks fantastic here in the camera, but in real life it looks even nicer. It's only 128 by 64 pixels, but actually for me, I am not that bothered about having a full color screen touch display. It takes up a load of real estate on the front of the radio, and it sucks a load of power to run it as well. Having a smaller screen like this is perfect, because when you're flying a load of FPV, all you really use it for is some basic telemetry and to choose the right model memory for the model that you're about to fly. The sticks themselves feel very, very nice. The feel is very good. And even though they probably are not quite full size, I'm not really feeling that in the playing that I'm doing here. And I like the fact they've also included foldable sticks. That means that in terms of having to find protectors and those kind of bits and pieces, you don't have to worry about it. Even with the sticks upright, it fits nicely in this smaller case. And this smaller case would keep everything in here, as well as spare receivers and stuff too. Although some people might worry that the gimbals aren't full size, my comment on that would be I wouldn't worry about it. Lots of switches on here, and the ability to customize them is fantastic. This is probably the most customizable of these radios I've had in here, and I will be playing with mine and actually customizing it to swap as many switches into positions as I possibly can. As somebody that does all the iNav stuff, as I've already shown, I can easily use 6 switches without breaking a sweat and getting into some of the more advanced functions. The build quality itself feels really nice. This feels like it has been cut out of a solid piece of high quality plastic. So there's none of the squeaks and the rattles. It just feels really good. And the weight in the hands is enough so that it feels like a quality piece of kit, but not enough that it's going to be tiresome to hold without some kind of neck strap for hours at a time. I do like the fact though that they have provided the case and also some extra things like additional gimbal springs and those kind of pieces too, and the covers for the side. You do kind of get everything you need in here to kind of play with this and set it up. And of course this, if you are an Express ELRS person or looking to get into it, is kind of going to allow you to talk to pretty much every style of current Express ELRS receiver, 2.4, 900 or Gemini X. There are only a few things to kind of point out here, and again it's one of those products that seems to be very well thought out. You know, Radiomaster have been making radios for a long time and getting lots and lots of feedback, and I do like the fact that they listen to us, which is great. So there's only a handful of things, but it does feel a bit nitpicky. The only things are that the neck strap, it doesn't hang completely level. You'd have to put a little bit of weight in the bottom if you wanted it to hang level. Small thing, but I know lots of people really like the neck strap, although with these smaller radios it's not as big a deal. There isn't any gimbal adjustment through the rear. There is obviously access to the gimbals and to play it, but you're going to have to take the radio apart to get to that. Obviously no SD card because the memory is now done internally, which is how modern GTX likes it to be done. And I think, you know, the use of SD cards in radios is something we're going to see less and less going forward. And it is a mini bay at the back, not a full JR bay. A lot of my older modules are full JR size, so I would have to get myself an adapter if I wanted to use them with the radio. But again, this GX12 has just been released today. I'll put a link down below so you can go and check it out. But this for me is going to replace the Boxer as my go-to radio for Express ELRS flying. And it's also going to replace all those other radios that you've seen when people ask me how to do particular setups, because that screen is so lovely to use. Thank you for watching my video. Check out the playlist, and adding Pedantry 60 to your search terms will help you find my content. If you haven't done so already, please hit the like and subscribe button. It helps a lot. You can support the time I spend here answering questions and helping others by using the links in the video description.